His lawyer's face went white. I mean, completely white. Like someone had drained all the blood right out of him. Bradley Whitmore, the most expensive divorce attorney in the state, the man who never loses, stood there with trembling hands flipping through documents he clearly did not expect to see. My husband Vincent sat next to him, and I watched his confident smirk melt away like ice cream on a hot sidewalk. Pure terror replaced it. The man who told me to get out of his house, the man who called our daughter disgusting names, the man who thought he was about to take everything from me, he finally understood. He had already lost. But let me tell you how I got there. Because 7 weeks ago, I was the one who thought my life was over. My name is Miranda Lowry. I'm 34 years old, and for 10 years, I believed I had a good marriage. Not perfect, but good. I was a forensic accountant before I became a mom. A really good one, actually. I found hidden money for a living. I uncovered fraud schemes that executives thought were bulletproof. But when my daughter Hazel was 2 years old and got diagnosed with a chronic respiratory condition, Vincent convinced me to stay home. She needed me, he said. He made enough money for both of us, he said. I could always go back to work later, he said. So I gave up my career to raise our child and support his dreams. Funny how that works out sometimes. That Tuesday evening started like any other. I was making dinner, Hazel was doing homework at the kitchen table, and Vincent came home early. That should have been my first warning sign. Vincent never came home early. He loosened his tie, sat down at the table across from our daughter, and calmly announced that he had filed for divorce. Just like that. Like he was telling me he picked up dry cleaning. But then he kept talking, and every word hit me like a punch to the stomach. He wanted everything. The house, the cars, the investment accounts. He had already hired Bradley Whitmore, and I should just accept that I was going to lose. Then he looked at Hazel, our 8-year-old baby girl who was sitting right there listening to every word, and he said something I will never forget. He said he didn't need me or my stinky, sick daughter. He actually called her that, stinky, sick, like she was garbage to throw away. Hazel burst into tears. I held her while my entire world collapsed around us, and Vincent just sat there looking annoyed, like our pain was an inconvenience to his schedule. The doorbell rang. Of course it did, because when your life falls apart, there's always someone waiting to make it worse. Vincent's mother, Dolores, walked in without waiting for anyone to answer. She had a key, naturally. Dolores had boundary issues the way the ocean has water issues. She swept into my kitchen like she owned the place, which I suppose she now believes she did, and immediately started measuring the windows. Actually measuring them. She had a little tape measure in her designer purse, and she was checking dimensions for new curtains while my daughter sobbed in my arms. Dolores never liked me. From the day Vincent introduced us, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her precious boy. I came from a regular middle-class family. I went to a state college. I didn't have the right pedigree or the right connections, or apparently the right window treatments. For 10 years, she dropped little comments about my cooking, my housekeeping, my parenting, my everything. Now she was triumphant. She told Vincent she was so proud of him for finally making the right decision. She said she always knew I was just after his money. The irony of that statement would become clear later, but at the time, it just hurt. Vincent gave me 48 hours to pack my things and leave his house. His house. The house I had lived in for 8 years. The house where I raised our daughter. The house where I thought we were building a life together. 2 days to erase a decade. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Hazel's room watching her breathe, listening to the slight wheeze that never quite goes away, and I tried to figure out how my life had fallen apart so completely. I thought about all the signs I must have missed, the late nights at the office, the business trips that seemed to happen more and more often, the way he looked at his phone and smiled at messages I never saw. I had been so focused on being a good mother that I forgot to notice I was becoming an invisible wife. The next morning, while packing boxes in my bedroom like a guest who had overstayed her welcome, I found something, a bank statement that had fallen behind Vincent's nightstand, probably months ago. I almost threw it away with the dust bunnies, but old habits die hard, and when you spend years analyzing financial documents, you can't help but look at numbers. Something was wrong. The account balance was way too small. I knew roughly what Vincent earned. I knew our monthly expenses. The math didn't work. There should have been at least 3 times this amount in savings. Where was the rest of our money? I tucked that statement into my purse. At the time, I didn't know why. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe just the forensic accountant in me refusing to let a discrepancy slide. But that crumpled piece of paper would change everything. Vincent stood by the door as I loaded the last boxes into my car. Hazel was already buckled in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit and looking confused about why we were leaving our home. Vincent didn't hug her goodbye. He didn't even look at her. He just checked his watch like we were making him late for something more important, probably a golf game, or his girlfriend, though I didn't know about her yet. I drove away from the house I had paid for, the life I had built, and the man I thought I knew. My daughter asked me when we were coming back home. I didn't have an answer, but I had that bank statement, and I had 10 years of professional training that Vincent had apparently forgotten about. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. I see every single comment and I appreciate each one of you so much. Your support means the world to me. Vincent wasn't satisfied with just ending our marriage. He wanted to destroy me completely. Within days, our mutual friends stopped returning my calls. One of them finally admitted why. Vincent had been telling everyone I was mentally unstable. He said I had substance abuse problems. He hinted that I might be an unfit mother. 10 years of being a devoted wife and mom, and suddenly, I was the villain of my own story. I found out later he had been building this narrative for months. Little comments at dinner parties, concerned whispers to neighbors. He was laying the groundwork for his perfect divorce before I even knew there was a problem. The man should have been a novelist instead of a real estate developer with that kind of creative fiction skills. But the worst part came in the mail 3 weeks before Vincent even filed for divorce. An explanation of benefits from our health insurance company, informing me that Hazel was no longer covered. He had removed her from his policy. My daughter, who needs regular treatments for her respiratory condition, who requires medication every single day, suddenly had no insurance. The first pharmacy bill arrived at our tiny rental apartment. I stared at the number and felt physically sick. That was more than our monthly rent for one prescription. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my daughter's health. Vincent was using our child as a weapon, and he didn't even have the decency to care if she got hurt in the crossfire. I think that's when something shifted inside me. Fear started turning into something else, something sharper. I met with a divorce attorney that week, a nice woman with a cluttered office and sympathetic eyes. She looked at my case, looked at Vincent's lawyer's name, and her face fell. Bradley Whitmore. She actually sighed out loud. She told me I should probably just take whatever settlement he offered because fighting Bradley Whitmore was like fighting a tsunami with an umbrella. Great. Very encouraging. I asked how much Whitmore charged per hour, and she told me. I calculated that just sneezing in that man's presence probably cost about $500. A few days later, I had to go to Vincent's office. During divorce proceedings, both parties have the legal right to request financial documents. I needed copies of tax returns and business statements. Vincent's secretary, a quiet woman named Ruth, helped me gather what I was entitled to see. She had kind eyes and a nervous habit of looking over her shoulder, but I barely noticed her that day because of what I saw through Vincent's office door. There she was, Tiffany Vance, 26 years old, blonde highlights, designer clothes draped over my husband's desk like a human decoration. She was laughing at something Vincent said, touching his arm in that way women touch men they're sleeping with. And when she saw me standing in the doorway, she smiled, not embarrassed, not apologetic, smug. She looked at me like I was already yesterday's news, and she was the shiny new tomorrow. The affair had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies, 2 years of business trips that weren't business trips, 2 years of late nights at the office that were very much not about work. While I was home taking care of his daughter, managing his household, supporting his career, he was building a whole separate life with someone else. I went home and made the mistake of checking social media. Tiffany's Instagram was a monument to my husband's betrayal. Photos from Paris, romantic dinners and restaurants Vincent always said were too expensive. beach vacations in places we never visited as a family, caption after caption about living her best life with #blessed and #grateful. I was grateful too. Grateful I hadn't eaten dinner yet because I definitely would have lost it. Then came Dolores's contribution to my public humiliation. She posted a long message on social media about how happy she was that her son had finally gotten rid of the gold digger who had trapped him. She wrote about how Vincent deserved better than a woman who couldn't even produce a healthy grandchild. She said my family had defective genes. She actually typed those words where everyone could see them. The comments filled with sympathy for poor Vincent and his difficult decade married to someone like me. The settlement offer arrived by certified mail. Bradley Whitmore's letterhead was very impressive, probably cost a fortune just to print. Vincent was being so generous, the letter explained. He would let me keep my personal clothing and my car, which was titled in my name anyway. Everything else went to him. The house, all investments, retirement accounts. I would receive minimum child support based on his reported income, which I already suspected was much lower than his actual income. I had 30 days to accept this offer or face the full force of his legal team in court. I sat at my kitchen table in that cramped rental apartment, listening to Hazel cough in the next room, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not despair, not fear, clarity. Vincent had forgotten something important about me. He remembered the wife who made his dinner and raised his child and smiled at his mother's insults. He forgot the woman who used to tear apart fraudulent financial statements for a living. He forgot that before I was Miranda Carrington, the homemaker, I was Miranda Lowry, forensic accountant, and I was very, very good at my job. I pulled out that crumpled bank statement from my purse. The numbers still didn't add up, and now I was going to find out why. I hadn't used my forensic accounting skills in 6 years, but it turns out that kind of training doesn't disappear. It just waits, like a computer in sleep mode, ready to wake up when you need it. I started spreading documents across my kitchen table every night after Hazel went to bed. Bank statements, tax returns, credit card bills, anything I could legally obtain through divorce discovery, plus the records I had kept over the years because accountants are natural hoarders of paperwork. My grandmother used to say that numbers don't lie, but people use numbers to lie all the time. Finding the lies was my specialty, and Vincent had been lying for a very long time. I called my old college roommate, Patricia Holbrook. Patricia and I had studied forensic accounting together, pulled all-nighters before exams together, and dreamed about catching corporate criminals together. She had stayed in the field and built a successful practice. When I explained my situation, she didn't hesitate. She said analyzing my husband's shady finances sounded like her idea of a perfect Friday night, and she was absolutely in. Patricia came over with wine, takeout Chinese food, and a legal pad. We spread everything out on my living room floor like a financial crime scene. Within 2 hours, she was pointing at numbers and making that face she used to make in college when she found something juicy. She told me my husband was either terrible at math or hiding a lot of money. I told her Vincent was actually excellent at math. She smiled and said then we were going to have some fun. Meanwhile, Vincent escalated his attacks. His lawyer filed a motion for full custody of Hazel. The reasoning made me want to scream. Vincent claimed I was financially unstable and couldn't provide proper care for a child with medical needs. The man who removed his own daughter from health insurance, who called her stinky and sick, now wanted full custody. He didn't want to be a father. He never really had been one, but he knew threatening to take my daughter would hurt me more than anything else. Hazel was a chess piece to him, a way to force me to surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. Not anymore. The first discovery came after 3 nights of digging. Hidden accounts. Vincent had opened investment accounts at a different bank than our regular one, accounts that were never disclosed on our joint financial statements. The total in those accounts was over $200,000. Money he had been siphoning from his business income for years, claiming it went to expenses and taxes. Money that should have been marital property. Money that would have paid for Hazel's medical care without me lying awake at night, wondering how I would afford her prescriptions. But the house was the real revelation. The house Vincent kept calling his house, the one he was so eager to keep in the divorce. I remember when we bought it. I was 7 months pregnant with Hazel and having complications. The doctor had put me on bed rest. Vincent said he would handle all the closing paperwork. He brought me documents to sign, and I signed them because I trusted my husband completely. What a cute, naive thing I was back then. My grandmother had passed away in our first year of marriage. She left me $200,000. It was the most money I had ever had, and I wanted to use it to build something meaningful. We put $175,000 down on our house, my money, my inheritance. I have the bank transfer records. I have the closing statement showing that amount as the down payment. But when I finally looked at the deed, really looked at it, my name wasn't there. Vincent had put only his name on the title. He had taken my grandmother's money, used it to buy a house, and then made sure I had no legal ownership of it. I called Patricia at midnight to tell her. She asked if I had proof of the payment. I told her I had bank records, the original transfer, and closing documents showing the exact amount. She said Vincent was either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid, possibly both, and that we were going to bury him. But we found more, so much more. A shadow company registered in Delaware, offshore accounts in places I couldn't pronounce, a pattern of transactions that looked exactly like textbook embezzlement. Vincent wasn't just hiding money from me, he was hiding money from his own business partners. He was committing fraud on a scale that went way beyond divorce court. I thought about his partners. Nice men I had met at company dinners over the years. They had families too. They trusted Vincent. He was stealing from all of us. My grandmother also taught me to always keep emergency money separate, a secret savings account that nobody knows about, she would say, because you never know when life will surprise you. I had $8,000 in an account Vincent never knew existed. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was about to become the foundation of my fight back. I also still had my professional certifications. I had kept them current over the years, doing occasional online courses during nap times and quiet evenings. I told myself it was just in case I ever wanted to work again. Now I realized some part of me had always known this day might come. The accountant in me had been preparing for disaster, even when the wife in me believed in forever. The evidence was growing. The pieces were connecting. But I needed help to put it all together in a way that would hold up in court. I needed a lawyer who wasn't afraid of Bradley Whitmore. I needed someone who would see what I saw, a path to victory hidden in Vincent's own arrogance. And I found her. Her name was Camille Ortega, and she worked out of a small office above a bakery downtown. No fancy reception area, no intimidating artwork. Just a desk covered in case files, and a woman who looked at me like she already knew I was going to win. Patricia had found her through professional connections. Camille had been practicing family law for 22 years, and she had beaten Bradley Whitmore twice. He still pretended not to remember her name at bar association events, which she found absolutely delightful. I couldn't afford her normal rates. I was honest about that from the start. But Camille looked through the evidence Patricia and I had compiled, and her eyebrows went up higher and higher with each page. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. She said she would take my case on partial contingency, a small retainer now, and a percentage of whatever we won, because we were absolutely going to win. She called Vincent's case a house of cards built on quicksand during an earthquake. I liked her immediately. Patricia's loan covered the retainer. $8,000 from my grandmother's secret fund covered initial filing fees and document preparation. My grandmother had been gone for 9 years, but she was still saving me. I think she would have appreciated the poetry of that. Camille's first instruction surprised me. She told me to act defeated, let Vincent think he had already won, cry at the right moments, seem confused by legal procedures, make his lawyers comfortable in their arrogance. The more confident they became, the sloppier they would get. And sloppiness leaves evidence. So I played the role of the overwhelmed housewife who didn't understand big, complicated legal things. When Vincent's lawyer sent intimidating letters, I responded with meek requests for more time. When Vincent himself called to gloat about his inevitable victory, I let my voice shake. He told me I should just accept his generous offer and save myself the embarrassment of losing in court. I said I was thinking about it. He laughed and said that was the smartest thing I had done in years. Meanwhile, I was building a case that would end his career. Patricia and I worked every night. We documented every hidden account. We traced every suspicious transfer. We calculated every dollar that should have been marital property, but somehow ended up in Vincent's secret portfolios. The total wasn't $200,000 anymore. When we finished counting, it was over $600,000. $600,000 hidden from our marriage, hidden from the IRS, hidden from his own business partners. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. The evidence about Tiffany was almost funny. Almost. Vincent had bought her a car. A very nice car that cost more than I spent on Hazel's medical care in 3 years. He bought her jewelry, including a necklace worth $4,000 that I remembered seeing on the credit card statement and asking about. He told me it was a client gift. He also rented her an apartment so they could have their private romantic getaway spot 15 minutes from our family home. The receipts for all of this were in his business expense records, which he had claimed as tax deductions. So he wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was cheating on the IRS, too. They tend to frown on that sort of thing. Then Ruth came forward. Ruth, the quiet secretary with the kind eyes who had helped me gather documents that day at Vincent's office. She called me one evening, voice barely above a whisper, and asked if we could meet somewhere private. We sat in a coffee shop across town where nobody would recognize us, and she told me everything. Ruth had worked for Vincent for 9 years, almost as long as his company had existed. She had watched him build his business, watched him charm investors, and watched him slowly transform into someone she didn't recognize. She had seen the fraudulent invoices. She had processed the suspicious wire transfers. She had filed the paperwork for the shell company in Delaware. For years, she told herself it wasn't her business. She needed the job. She was a single woman approaching retirement with no safety net. But 5 years ago, Ruth's daughter went through a divorce, a terrible one. Her daughter's husband was wealthy and connected, and he took everything. Her daughter lost her home, lost custody of her kids for 6 months, almost lost her mind. Ruth watched her own child suffer while a powerful man used the legal system as a weapon. Sound familiar? When Ruth saw Vincent filing for divorce, saw how he talked about me and Hazel, something broke inside her. Or maybe something finally healed. She had been keeping copies of documents for years, just in case, she told herself. Just in case someone ever needed them. She handed me a folder that was 3 inches thick. It was everything. Records Vincent thought had been deleted. Emails he assumed were gone forever. The complete paper trail of his fraud, organized chronologically and cross-referenced by transaction. Ruth had been a secretary for 30 years, and apparently secretaries know where all the bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking, of course. No actual bodies in this story. I asked Ruth if she understood what would happen when this came out. She would lose her job. Vincent would probably try to sue her. Her retirement plans would be complicated at best. Ruth smiled and said she was 62 years old and she was tired of being complicit in hurting good people. Some things matter more than a pension. Besides, she added, she had already applied for a job at her cousin's accounting firm. They were expecting her to start in a couple of months. Camille nearly cried when she saw Ruth's documents. She said this was the most beautiful evidence package she had ever received. We now had enough to win the divorce case 10 times over. But more importantly, we had enough to trigger federal investigations, tax fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement from business partners. Vincent wasn't just going to lose his divorce. He was going to lose everything he had ever stolen. We prepared 3 copies of the complete evidence file, one for the court, one that would be anonymously delivered to the IRS, because I am a good citizen who believes in paying taxes, and one that would arrive at the offices of Vincent's business partners 2 days before our final hearing. They deserved to know who they were working with. The hearing was scheduled for 7 weeks after Vincent filed for divorce, expedited because of the child custody issues and Camille's emergency motion regarding fraud in Vincent's financial declarations. The judge assigned to our case was Eleanor Fitzgerald, known for having zero tolerance for lying in her courtroom. Things were coming together. Vincent called me 2 days before the hearing. He sounded relaxed, happy even. He said he was looking forward to finally putting this behind us. He mentioned that he and Tiffany were planning a trip to celebrate after his victory. The Maldives. Very romantic. Very expensive. He suggested I use my settlement money wisely since it would be the last help I ever got from him. I said I appreciated the advice. I wished him safe travels. And I hung up the phone and laughed until I cried. He had no idea. No idea at all. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old paper and anxiety. I had dressed carefully that morning. Professional, but not flashy. The kind of outfit that says, I am a responsible mother, not a gold digger. Camille had coached me on this. Appearances matter, especially in family court. Vincent arrived with Bradley Whitmore like they were walking into a victory party. Expensive suits, confident smiles, the easy body language of men who had never lost anything important. Whitmore carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Vincent winked at me across the courtroom. Actually winked, like this was all a fun game he had already won. Dolores sat in the front row of the gallery, wearing a dress that screamed, "Look how wealthy and superior I am." She had a small notebook, probably planning to write down every humiliating detail of my defeat to share with her friends later. Tiffany was there too, a few rows back, checking her phone and looking bored. I wondered if she had started packing for the Maldives yet. And there, in the back of the gallery, sat 3 men I recognized from company events, Vincent's business partners. They had received their evidence packages 2 days ago. They had not told Vincent they were coming. Their faces were completely unreadable, which was somehow more terrifying than open anger. If you're still here with me, I just want to say thank you for listening to my story. If it's touching your heart, please take a second to hit that like button and maybe share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support keeps me going, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you. Now, let me tell you what happened next. Judge Fitzgerald entered, and everyone rose. She had gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like a librarian who had seen too much nonsense in her life and had no patience left for any more. I liked her immediately. Whitmore presented Vincent's case first. He painted a picture of a successful businessman burdened by an unstable wife who had contributed nothing to their marriage. He talked about Vincent's generous settlement offer. He expressed concern for poor Hazel, who clearly needed a stable home environment that only her father could provide. He used words like erratic and financially irresponsible and pattern of concerning behavior. It was a masterful performance. Complete fiction, but masterful. Then it was Camille's turn. She started small. Simple questions about our marriage, our home, our finances. Vincent answered confidently. Yes, the house was purchased during their marriage. Yes, it was titled in his name only. No, his wife had not contributed to the purchase. She was not employed at the time. Camille nodded thoughtfully. Then she introduced Exhibit A, the bank records showing a wire transfer of $175,000 from my personal account to the closing company 8 years ago. The amount exactly matching the down payment on the house, the date exactly matching the closing date, the memo line reading house down payment in my own handwriting. Vincent's smile flickered. Whitmore leaned over to whisper something. The judge's eyebrows rose. Camille introduced Exhibit B, documentation of my grandmother's estate, showing the inheritance I received. The source of those funds traced clearly from her accounts to mine to the house purchase, a house that Vincent claimed I had not contributed to. The judge asked Vincent directly if he had any explanation. He stammered something about joint finances and marital contributions being complicated. She did not look convinced. Then came the hidden accounts, Exhibit C through Exhibit J. Investment portfolios totaling over $600,000. Accounts opened solely in Vincent's name at banks I had never heard of. Deposits that matched exactly with discrepancies in his reported business income. Money that should have been disclosed as marital assets. Money that had been hidden from me and from this court. Whitmore's face changed. The confident lawyer mask slipped, revealing something like panic underneath. He objected repeatedly. The judge overruled him repeatedly. Vincent was no longer smiling. He was staring at the documents like they might burst into flames if he concentrated hard enough. Camille introduced the shell company records, the offshore accounts, the pattern of transactions that spelled fraud in letters a mile high. She explained calmly that these documents had also been provided to Mr. Carrington's business partners, who were present in the courtroom today. She added that the information may also be of significant interest to certain federal agencies. Vincent turned around and saw his partners for the first time. The color drained from his face. One of them, a man named Gregory, who had always been friendly to me at holiday parties, just shook his head slowly. The disappointment in his eyes was devastating. Bradley Whitmore asked for a recess. His hands were actually trembling. The legendary lawyer who never lost, who charged $500 just to think about your case, was coming apart at the seams. Judge Fitzgerald denied the recess. She wanted to see where this was going. Camille introduced the evidence of Vincent's affair, the car he bought for Tiffany, the apartment he rented for their meetings, the jewelry, including that $4,000 necklace, all claimed as business expenses, all deducted from taxes. She noted that this appeared to constitute tax fraud in addition to marital fraud. I glanced at Tiffany. She was no longer looking at her phone. She was looking at the exit. Survival instinct finally kicking in, I suppose. She slipped out of the courtroom quietly, probably realizing that the Maldives trip was not going to happen and that being associated with Vincent Carrington was about to become very uncomfortable. Dolores sat frozen in her seat, mouth hanging open slightly. The notebook lay forgotten in her lap. This was not the story she had planned to tell her friends. Vincent tried to speak. He said this was all lies, all fabrications, that I had somehow manufactured evidence to destroy him. Judge Fitzgerald cut him off. She had seen a lot of cases in her career, she said. People lied to her all the time. But the audacity of lying this extensively, this brazenly, while committing fraud against a spouse, business partners, and the federal government simultaneously was genuinely impressive. And not in a good way. She looked at Vincent the way you look at something unpleasant stuck to your shoe. Then she looked at me, and for just a moment I saw something like respect in her eyes. Judge Fitzgerald's ruling was everything I had dreamed of and more. Full custody of Hazel to me. The house, which I had paid for with my grandmother's inheritance, transferred entirely to my name. 70% of all marital assets awarded to me due to Vincent's fraud, hidden accounts, and perjury before the court. Full child support calculated on his actual income, not the fake numbers he had reported. Medical expenses for Hazel covered completely, and Vincent was ordered to restore her health insurance immediately, retroactive to the day he had removed her. The man who said he wanted everything was about to lose everything. The man who told me to get out of his house was now legally required to get out of my house. The man who called his daughter stinky and sick would spend the next 10 years paying for her care, whether he liked it or not. But the court ruling was just the beginning of Vincent's collapse. The federal investigation started within 3 weeks. Tax fraud is not something the IRS takes lightly, especially when it's documented this thoroughly. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His passport was flagged. The Maldives would have to wait, possibly forever. His business partners filed their own lawsuit. Embezzlement from a partnership is a serious matter, and Gregory and the others were not feeling forgiving. They wanted their money back plus damages. Vincent's lawyers, plural now because Whitmore had mysteriously developed a scheduling conflict that prevented him from continuing representation, were billing hours they would probably never collect. Dolores stopped posting on social media. Her friends had seen the court documents, which were public record. The gold digger story didn't hold up well when everyone could read about her son's $600,000 in hidden accounts and his ongoing federal investigation. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had taken down all her posts about the divorce and was telling people she had always had concerns about Vincent's character. Some things never change. Tiffany disappeared from Vincent's life approximately 45 minutes after the court ruling. The apartment he had rented for her was in his name, and with his assets frozen, rent was no longer being paid. The car was repossessed 2 weeks later. I don't know where she went, and I found that I genuinely did not care. She was a symptom, not the disease. Vincent had plenty of problems that had nothing to do with her. Ruth retired on schedule. She sent me a card congratulating me on my victory, with a pressed flower from her garden tucked inside. She wrote that her daughter had cried happy tears reading about the case, and that sometimes justice really does win. I framed that card. It sits on my desk at my new job. Because yes, I went back to work. It turns out that forensic accountants who can uncover massive fraud schemes are in high demand. Patricia recommended me to several firms, and I had 3 job offers within a month. I chose the one with the best health insurance and the most flexible schedule for a single mom. My skills had been sleeping for 6 years, but they woke up ready to work. Hazel and I moved back into our house. I let her pick new colors for her bedroom, and she chose purple with silver stars. We adopted a cat from the shelter because Hazel had always wanted one, and Vincent had always said no. She named him Biscuit, and he sleeps at the foot of her bed every night. Her breathing is better now. Regular treatment, proper medication, a stable home where she feels safe and loved. She still asks about her father sometimes. I tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. He made some bad choices. He has to deal with the consequences. We will be okay. Last month, I ran into Vincent at the grocery store. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by wrinkled khakis and a shirt that needed ironing. He saw me and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. I walked past him without stopping. I had nothing left to say to him. Some people think being quiet means being weak. Some people confuse patience with surrender. And some people really should pay more attention to their wife's career history before trying to steal everything she has. My grandmother used to tell me that the universe has a long memory and a good sense of timing. I didn't always believe her. But sitting in my kitchen now, watching Hazel play with Biscuit in the backyard of the home I fought for, I think maybe she was right. Justice doesn't always come fast, but when it comes complete. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.